Here with Mike with more tips and thoughts about writing. Although this may be a little different topic today.
Good morning, folks. Actually, Ann suggested this topic, which is my celebrity encounters, which is no big deal because anybody who works in publicity or for newspapers on the entertainment beat is going to have dozens, if not hundreds, of celebrity encounters. Print media is dying, so they may not be as prevalent as they used to be. But when I lived in Boston, I was the entertainment editor for the Boston Phoenix. And part of my job was to go out night after night and listen to music and talk to the musicians, which I love doing. One day they asked me to meet a couple of musicians who were making their first tour of the United States. So I went to the hotel. It was a big swanky hotel downtown. And Freddie Mercury and Brian May were waiting for me in a private room. We were going to have lunch together. And, you know, I had never even heard Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm not sure if they had even recorded it at that point, but I remember Freddie vividly because he was such a colorful character. And I couldn't stop staring at his teeth. And I said, Freddie, why did you name your band Queen? And he went, oh, I don't know. It was just the most awful name we could think of. I would also meet with actors who were promoting their latest film. One such actor was Richard Harris, who you may know from Unforgiven or A Man Called Horse. He was promoting a film called 99% Dead, an entirely forgettable crime thriller he had made with his girlfriend at the time. And again, we met at a swank hotel where they would serve up lunch. That was probably part of the deal. That was part of the benefits of being an entertainment writer or editor is you got to have lunch with these people, and the lunches were usually pretty good. But I'll never forget Richard Harris was there. He's sitting around, and there was a big bowl of peas in the middle of the table. I mean, big. I don't know why they served this huge bowl of peas, but Richard Harris said, peas. And he picked the whole bowl up and he put it down in front of himself and he started shoveling peas into his mouth. And that's what I remember about that. They also had a sports writer named George Kimball, and they would give movie previews in this special little movie preview room that was in the Roxy Theater downtown in what has since become it was a dangerous district at night in those days. It's now been completely renovated and gentrified, but in those days we would meet in this little movie theater, which was up on the third floor, and it was just like a private home theater with regular movie seats, it only sat about 100. And I went with George Kimball to see the premiere of a movie called Deliverance, which I'm sure you know of. It stars Jon Voight, and it's a famous film. And we're sitting there watching the movie, and George pulls out a little bottle and a spoon, and he goes, and then he says, here. And he passed it to me. Well, I was young and stupid. I didn't know what I was doing, so I tried it. And that was my first exposure to cocaine. And believe it or not, I never touched it again for a number of years. And I haven't touched it in decades. One day, on the Boston Garden, there was a big festival, and George called me and says, hey, you want to meet Hunter Thompson? Come on down here. So I raced down to the Boston Garden on the train. That's how we all got around in Boston those days. It was very efficient. And I met George at this big tent in the middle that had been set up by a radio station to do a Hunter Thompson broadcast. And Hunter Thompson was indeed there, but he was so drunk he was incoherent. And George introduced me, and Hunter didn't even acknowledge it because he was staring off into space. So we never exchanged any words. I also interviewed Jaco Pastorius, who was one of the greatest bass players who ever lived, and he was playing with Weather Report at the time, which I saw several times. And Jaco was a great interview, but as you know, or maybe you don't know, he suffered from mental problems, notably schizophrenia, which eventually led to his untimely death. when he was acting in a bizarre way at a nightclub, and the bouncer thought he'd go to town on him, and Jaco Pastorius was beaten to death just for acting odd because he has schizophrenia. I interviewed Eric Carmen, who is the mastermind behind the Raspberries, one of the greatest power pop bands of all time. And this has often happened when I interview touring musicians. He met me in his hotel room and he was as sick as a dog. He had some kind of sinus infection or cold. And this is an occupational hazard for musicians who tour. But he gave a very good interview. And that night at the performance where he was performing with his own band, this was post-Raspberries, you couldn't tell he was sick at all. Years later, I interviewed Rick Derringer in Madison, Wisconsin. The same thing. Rick was sick as a dog. And he says, I'm sorry, I can't speak real well. I'm sorry I talk like this. But later at the performance, you couldn't tell. This is what professional musicians do. Sometimes they overcome those handicaps and you would not know they were sick from their performance. Finally, I had dinner with Ernest Borgnine, and he was promoting the film Emperor of the North, which is a movie about hobos in the 30s riding the rails. Lee Marvin was the star, but Ernest Borgnine had a big role. And I had seen Ernest Borgnine in many movies, most notably The Wild Bunch. And when I met him, he was such a self-effacing, polite little guy. You just contrast that with the persona he projected on the screen, like The Wild Bunch or From Here to Eternity, where he becomes this monstrous, overbearing personality, which means that Ernest Borgnine was a superb actor. Finally, one other celebrity encounter. Elvis Costello was doing his first American tour in Madison, Wisconsin. I was writing for Isthmus at the time, and they sent me down to Bunky's, the nightclub where he was doing a sound check, to get an interview. So I walked up to him and I said, Mr. Costello, I'm Mike Barron. I'm from Isthmus. I'd like to ask you a few questions. Piss off! I asked him again. Same answer. I've never been able to listen to his music. That's all.
All right. Well, that was very interesting. And you just sent out an e-newsletter recently about upcoming works, projects. Any comments on those?
We are on the verge of launching Private American. It's almost done. Private American is everything Captain America should be, but isn't. And when we meet him, he's down on the southern border. It doesn't get much news these days about what's happening in the southern border, but we all know what's happening. And we're gearing up for Bronze Star, which is the weird Western I'm doing with Pat Broderick. And I've been posting some of the art. And those who've seen the art have been blown away because it's the best work of Pat's career, and he will tell you that. I will be at the Colorado Springs Comic Convention this weekend. So will Pat. We will get together and talk. We will sign things. Who knows, we may even do a panel.
All right. And where is the Colorado Springs Comic Con going to be held at?
At the Broadmoor Convention Center downtown.
Okay. Great. All right. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.